So our next presentation is going to be from one of our own, Sara Seale, who's assistant head teacher at Woolwich Polytechnic School for Girls, and she's going to be talking about the Growing Great Teachers programme that they run there. If you'd like to share your screen, Sarah, and I'll move your cam onto the screen as well.
Yeah. Tell me if you can see this. Yep. Is that sharing?
Yeah,
that's great, Sarah. Yeah, thank you.
Right, good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Sorry about the delayed start there. I'm going to be talking about CPD and ultimately growing great teachers and what we do here as part of the Trust and as part of our girls' school, which, if you don't know, makes up part of the Trust. So we have the girls' school and the boys' school. So as the Trust, our professional growth, we see it and it encompasses these kind of several purposes to obviously build and enhance expertise, to allow staff to reflect on strengths and successes, and to promote a culture of professionalism. So when we were designing and looking at kind of CPD in the girls' school, we had this metaphor for of a tree almost to encompass this idea of growth. Growth as a school, because as you know, we are a new school. We only have year 7 and year 8 currently, but growth as a new team and a new staff. So if we think about the roots of a tree and kind of what that encompasses, we think about these 6 different strands, these 6 different roots. So we have the collaboration, specialist support, experimentation and applying, sustainability, observation and challenge. And with those 6 roots, we enable this growth for that continued professional development. So the idea of collaboration, so working with and supporting our peers and our colleagues, so whether that be in pairs, small groups, specialist support, so having not only kind of in-house CPD, but ensure we're looking outside as well on different people's talents. So, for example, we've had Mary Myatt and Ross McGill run training sessions for us to grow in that way, and experimentation and application, so allowing staff that time to apply the knowledge that they learn from this CPD. So if I draw first of all on the sustainability, now I think the one general misconception CPD is it's this thing that's tagged on perhaps a week or fortnightly or termly, I'm not sure, depending on how your schools, and we wanted to rid that misconception and really think about CPD being part of our culture. So at the Poly, we have our Teaching and Learning Poly Hub, which encompasses everything we do with our professional growth. So you can see in that visual diagram there, on a Monday, we'll have Poly Triads. I'll go into a bit more detail about what they are in a bit. Then we have Poly CPD, so that is kind of fortnightly CPD, focusing on key elements based on not necessarily current research, but research in the educational field that will have that impact within the classroom, so that pedagogical development. So things such as our retrieval practice, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, the Dunning-Kruger effect, questioning. These are all different elements that we focus on termly when we run that CPD with staff, and that all links in then to the middle leader training that we do the following Monday, which then links into our department time. So it's this real cyclical, sustainable CPD structure, because what we do, we don't want whatever we're focusing on to be done in isolation. It needs to be something that we can take away and apply and then review, rather than it being just an add-on session where staff are forced to sit there for an hour or so and listen to someone talk about lots of research and lots of techniques, and then it's never really touched upon again. We have this kind of termly focus. It's incorporated into everything we do in this cyclical structure as part of a reviewing and growth process. So that then links us to this idea of the collaboration, one of our other roots. And I spoke briefly about that a moment ago when I said about connecting with and drawing support from colleagues. I think particularly as school grows, that there's the not necessarily opportunity, but there's quite negatively, I think we fall into survival mode and we tend to just work within our departments. And I wanted to rid that concept. So I created the Poly Triads, which is where staff across departments were put into triads with staff from other departments. And every other Monday, they meet with those other members of staff. So you could have English teacher, PE, and a humanities teacher in a triad. And in that fortnightly Monday meeting, they will discuss the CPD focus, so it may be retrieval practice, and they will discuss and look at what kind of methods that they've been using within their subjects. They'll go into each other's lessons over the fortnight and give each other feedback, and it's just ensuring there is that cross-curricular discussion happening. So we're not doing things in isolation as a staff body, we're really sharing that best practice and opening up those discussions, because I think a lot of staff are doing a lot of really great things, and if we don't give staff the opportunity and the time to discuss those and apply those, then they become lost. In our middle leader meetings as well, that collaboration with middle leaders, we know the pressures and the time constraints of middle leaders. They need that time to come together and review what's working within departments, and they might have slightly different needs or areas of concern. So in allowing them to have a fortnightly slot as well, that allows them to kind of communicate and work together. And the middle leader meetings are actually led by two of our outstanding middle leaders here at the girls' school. So this whole idea of this team and this collaboration, and SLT can dip in and out, but ultimately it's a time and a space for them to be able to work. And they, again, using this kind of cyclical visual structure, they work from the CPD schedule. So if we're focusing on retrieval practice, for that term, the middle leaders will look at retrieval practice within their departments as well, but they'll be able to have a more kind of middle leader focus for that discussion. Then within department times, again, if retrieval practice is our focus for that term, in departments there will be an opportunity at the beginning of the session in which staff will present on what they have been doing within their departments, within their lessons, and they share examples of best practice and this whole idea of sharing what they're doing well within lessons, and that draws in on kind of that idea of collaborating and working with peers and supporting our colleagues. So when we think about those routes, obviously then we need to think about the ultimate growth. So the growth of our school, but also the growth of our staff. And this leads us into our 6 branches. And this is where we see the real benefits of an effective CPD cycle. So it links with this idea of connectedness. So this idea of our beliefs, learning and curriculum, they should all be interlinked. Self-efficacy, so actually renewing staff interest in learning and developing teaching. Let's take away this need to survive and just get through a day and actually start strengthening our belief about why we are doing what we're doing. We're here to ensure that pupils are getting the best learning, the best quality curriculum. So actually, let's renew that interest in our staff and give them the power to develop. Depth, so developing our understanding of what works and doesn't work. And I think the depth comes from allowing that time to be able to review, reflect and refresh. Doing that CPD, then having that application time to apply the different things that we're looking at, the different research. There's no point doing this research and putting in this time if we don't give staff that application time. Efficiency, so ensuring that actually what we're doing is having and giving pupils that chance to succeed. So that comes into our reviewing. So when we have the review, we have the CPD where we share what's working well and actually what hasn't worked too well. And those conversations are happening within the Poly Triads. When we do the Poly Triads, they share what works well in departments, what doesn't. And this is continual discussion, this continual collaboration. This then links quite nicely with the idea of motivation. So idea of committing ourselves to this change, practicing and trying new ideas. If you've been teaching colleagues for quite a while, you'll know that actually sometimes ideas come around, very, very cyclical within teaching. I know myself, and I've been leading CPDs and I've spoken to colleagues who've been teaching for 20 plus years. The research is there. A lot of this has been done, but ultimately it's about looking at, okay, well, what can we take from this? What are the benefits of this method of CPD? What are the methods of this research that we can take that can be applicable and ultimately beneficial for our students? And it's really about stripping it right back. Okay, developing the pedagogy of a teacher ultimately needs to come from developing the curriculum knowledge of a teacher. So we can't just say we're doing retrieval practice, this is an add-on. We need to ensure through this cyclical structure that staff are having that opportunity to look at how it is applicable to their subject and their subject area and their curriculum, which links with the contextualization. So learning in the context of concrete evidence. So how do they experience teaching and learning in the classroom? What are they learning? How is it relevant contextually to where we're teaching, to the classroom, but also to the wider community? So drawing on those elements of cultural capital. So if I think about self-efficacy, how do we here at the Poly renew that interest in learning? And this comes in with our kind of professional growth. So we have a new kind of vision with performance management, and that is we do a Growing Great Teachers project. So rather than having a performance management process, which many of us will be familiar with, here at the Poly, at the Girls' School, we have a professional growth plan. We like to see ourselves as solution focused and ensuring that staff are growing and challenging themselves and developing in areas of interest to themselves. So through that, we do the Growing Great Teachers, where staff choose a project they are passionate about, and throughout the year, they will look at the intent, implementation and impact of that project. And at the end of the academic year, they will then present on their findings, what worked well, why they chose that project, how did they implement it. So it's really empowering our staff to look at things that perhaps they may not have had the opportunity to explore in other educational settings. So I have here on the screen, colleagues, I have some examples of some project titles that current staff are working on. You can see there we've got develop online extracurricular provision to enhance pupil engagement, oracy monitors, so getting students to think about oracy. Everyone loves grammar, but not everyone knows it yet. Writing revolution, so empowering all staff as teachers of writing, building cultural capital, talk writing, and it goes on. Now, the one thing that staff need to think about when they're thinking about their Growing Great Teachers project is how ultimately will their project, will their interests feed into the whole school development plan. So how is it applicable whole school? And it gives staff the autonomy to go and research and read on something they're passionate about and then apply it to this whole school setting through that experimentation within their classroom, through what they love doing through their curriculum. We have a shared drive where, as you can see, I've screenshotted it here, where they not only kind of put their project so other staff can see what they're working on, but they also put the recommended reading or the reading that they've been doing. So staff can dip in and out and have a little look at what other staff are doing and working on, and you get some really great recommendations there for some educational reading. Everything we do here at the Poly is founded on research, and when someone comes up with a great idea, that's great, but where's the research to support what you're doing and why? So we are really founded on ensuring that whatever we're doing has an intent, has a purpose, and then we look at the implementation. So it's giving staff that autonomy, giving staff that creativity to grow themselves rather than them being led by what we believe is the best route for them. So that's our Growing Great Teachers. And so far, we obviously have only been open for 2 years, and the majority of that has been taken over by COVID. So we are yet to have this presentation process, but the presentations will be in July, in which staff will present. So we're really excited to kind of hear what staff have been up to, but we have throughout the year around 4 or 5 check-in points with line leaders where they discuss their projects and how they're going. But it'll be really exciting, I think, when we come together as a staff body to share the research and what we've actually found. So that's our Growing Great Teachers. And as I put there on the side, it's a programme designed to change the way we view accountability and professional development. Okay, we're not just here for the grades. We're here to develop in a profession that is so profound and is so vital in society. And I think it's really important that as teachers, as professionals, we're constantly developing and growing, but we're also thinking about why we're doing this job and what we feel excited about. And this project, the Growing Great Teachers, this professional development allows staff to explore that further. So professional development moving forward. Now, planning CPD elements, as I touched on earlier, such as retrieval practice or improving questioning, can be superficial if it's not linked intrinsically to subject knowledge of teachers. So we need to start thinking about not only how we implement good CPD, but ensuring that it is developing the subject knowledge of our staff. And that's where the middle leader training and that department time is crucial and vital to developing staff. We are here and we all join the profession with a subject, with something we are passionate about. And as we grow and we change through roles, it's ensuring we don't lose sight of that passion and that knowledge. And we look at how we can continue to improve and develop and keep with the times in this kind of ever-changing climate with regards to our subject. So CPD needs to be focused on, is the knowledge of our staff good at its foundation? And then we work on how we develop those pedagogical elements around that knowledge, because ultimately without the fundamental knowledge of the staff, you can't then work on those pedagogies, because you could be a very good teacher, but if you haven't got that subject knowledge, how are you stretching and challenging the pupils? How are you ensuring they're getting the best from your teaching and learning? So to kind of draw and on a close on what I've been talking about today, CPD needs to be an embedded process. It needs to be a cyclical structure that focuses on the development of staff, but is not this add-on that many schools do. It needs to be integrated, embedded, and staff need to see the value and worth of the CPD so that it's applicable to them through all stages of their career. And that is everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That's a brilliant presentation. I'm hoping that there'll be some questions for you in a moment coming through. We are always sort of about 30 seconds behind the participants, so they may come through in a moment. It's also a shame that we don't have Ross yet, because I know that Ross would want to share his views on that presentation. I'm sure he would have things to talk about. But we're still trying to get Ross in the room. So if anyone is, here, particularly for Ross, we are almost there, I think, in getting him in the room. But it's just going to take us a little bit longer, we hope, before we can get him in. Now, if you haven't yet managed to get questions on your screen, you should be able to see there's a bar at the bottom of the presentation that you can see there. Where it tells you how to get to those questions. So there's a little icon that's got a question mark on it. You can click on that, and that allows you to type in a question. So please do, if you've got a question, please do decide to click on that button, and you can submit a question, which we'll be able to see and we'll be able to answer for you. Sarah will be staying on the call for a little while, so if any questions do come through, we'll be able to come back to you, Sarah. We haven't got any just right now, so we're going to move on to the next item. Before we do that, I've got some questions for you regarding that survey, because we've got a couple more survey results here. So we've got virtual staff meetings, and as you can see, we've got 42% saying revert to face-to-face meetings, and 58% saying we should keep virtual meetings, which I think is an interesting one. And then we've also got virtual assemblies, which has got 68% saying let's go back to face-to-face, and 32% saying let's keep virtual. Sarah, I don't know if you want to comment on either of those.
I think it's interesting looking at this and thinking about kind of what staff have reflected within our kind of CPD and our discussions. I know we have a few girls staff listening now. Virtual staff meetings, I think the value of that is that sometimes keeping to timing can be a bit easier. So that's definitely a positive. I think the revert, if we look at that percentage, 42%, the difficulty is, and you'll know yourself if you ever presented a CPD, whilst it's nice being on the other side, maybe with a cup of tea, muted, camera off, you can just enjoy and listen. Presenting can be quite difficult because I think naturally as humans we work off interaction and looking at reaction to be able to gauge whether anything we're saying is kind of making sense, or if we're talking too fast, or kind of just generally having that human reaction and interaction. So it is always interesting to see, but I do understand where staff are coming from with regards to, okay, this is an hour meeting, let's keep it an hour meeting. So that is definitely something staff have reflected on in the girls' school. Virtual assemblies, I'm so glad to see that 68% are saying kind of revert back to physical assemblies. I think it's so important for our girls, particularly, and our boys, particularly within assemblies, to have that opportunity to be able to work on their oracy and share kind of real successes and work on presentation. I know we are in a kind of an ever-changing virtual world, but I think that's still an invaluable skill that so many of our pupils really benefit from. If you think about kind of schools across the country who have kind of the opportunity to be able to speak to crowds and to audiences. I think it's an invaluable skill that they can take through into all professions of how to speak formally and appropriately within things like assemblies. So it's interesting to see what people are coming back with.
It certainly is.